Hello, and welcome to episode 104 of the Blood Brothers podcast. We have had a little break for summer, but we are back and raring to go with Rob Parker. Hello, Rob.
Hiya, mate. We're back in business.
What business tonight? We have got the author of 3/5, which I read last year and absolutely loved, and the latest, After the Lights Go Out.
You got it.
I usually have them written down. I've written down 3/5 for some reason. We've got John Vercher. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's great to meet you tonight, John.
Pleasure to meet you as well.
Please, can you tell us, I guess, about your latest book to start things off?
Sure. So After the Lights Go Out is about a biracial mixed martial arts fighter named Xavier Wallace, nicknamed the Scarecrow. He's in his late 30s, and he's coming off the tail end of a year-long suspension, the reasons for which to be revealed if you just happen to choose to read. And as he is coming off the suspension, he is also fighting the effects of mid to late stage chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, or dementia pugilistica. As he is going through this, he is also caring for his white father, who is in the end stages of Alzheimer's disease. And as part of the disease process, his father's filters are starting to fall away. And Xavier begins to discover that his father's not the man he thought he was, and is actually probably responsible for his black mother leaving the things personally. But he's also got the chance at one final fight to kind of go out on his terms, but an incident involving his CTE sort of changes the stakes around that fight and determines whether or not he gets to be the deciding factor.
Man, I don't know how I'm going to hold this together during this, because there's so many questions I want to ask. Well, no, John, because I box, not to a high level, but I box 5 days a week. I'm in a gym with mixed martial artists, and there's so many questions I want to ask, because I like seeing this, like day by day, this kind of and the human cost of that sport as well,
Right.
We'll get to. I mean, I'm so sorry. I'm going to hijack a writing podcast by asking about MMA.
That's okay. That's all right. That's all right.
Because
I did. So I trained. I've trained in martial arts probably 3/4 of my life. I was I did Taekwondo all through high school. Sort of took a break from that in college, because partying and beer and all that good stuff. Got back into it as an adult and really got into it. So I started training MMA. I had gotten really overweight. Couldn't find any kind of exercise that was really doing it for me. Remembered how much I loved martial arts, started training in it, and it got in my blood like you wouldn't believe. And to the point where I was like, I want to try my hand at this. So I did some amateur competitions, kickboxing. I did one amateur fight in the cage. I don't spar anymore, but I still train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So although I've been on a break with that because of COVID and things like that, but I've been training consistently probably for the last 13 years or so.
I have this, because whenever I hear that someone has an interest in this, I have like a little league table in my head, and you've just gone top 3 in the world of hard man authors out there, it's awesome. And for listeners as well, whenever I'm in the gym and they say, would you like to go and spar with the MMA guys? I'm like, yes, but inside I'm like, hell no. I don't want to go over there, man. That is a different level.
If it makes you feel any better, it's the same. It was the same thoughts for me, even though I was training in it consistently. I mean, every amateur fight I had was the scariest fucking thing I ever did in my life.
Oh man, no, huge respect.
What's the mindset of walking up to the cage? Like, how does that feel?
What the fuck am I doing? There was not one fight where I was like, I'm the man, I got this. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I should go home. I could go just have dinner, watch a movie. Like, why am I doing this? But then, like, the minute it was over, it was like, okay, when do I get to do that again? It was. But I always make the disclaimer that I was a tourist, man, in the sense that, like, I didn't have the goods to be in that mind. Time between competitions was torture. Like, I was just an anxious mess. Like, I could never think about what could go right. It was always what could go wrong. So I ended up beating myself before I ever stepped foot on the mat or in the ring. So it was, I was a tourist for sure. I didn't have the aspirations and the I didn't have at stake, I think, what these men and women who are either professionals or who are amateurs aspiring to become professionals. I didn't have this to them. That's on a whole other level.
Man, so how was it taking those sensibilities and the things that drew you to the sport?
I've been a fan of fight fiction. The idea behind this and the idea of putting it in a book, I guess, probably twofold. One, I hadn't read a story. You've seen some grittier fight books, but not really dealing with the toll it takes on the men and women that compete in this. But it's also because I've been on the other side of the coin where for more than a decade I was a physical therapist. I worked with athletes. I've worked with dementia patients. I've worked with Alzheimer's patients. I've run the gamut. So I've seen the other side of the coin, post-concussion syndrome, all of these things where you realize the cost. And I think what I was trying to do with this book was ask the question of myself and I've hopefully of other readers, like, why do we still love this sport and sports like it? Because some of us are very acutely aware of the cost, but yet, I mean, we watch it like it's popping candy. You just give me more. I got to see it. And I don't know. I haven't gotten that answer yet. I haven't figured that out.
I suppose that's why we always still, when they say I have this battle a lot during the year is, when either boxing or MMA, and it's like, hey, the next fight's going to be on pay-per-view. And I'm like, I won't pay for that. I won't pay for that.
Yeah.
And then it gets to 6 o'clock on the night. I'm like, I'm paying for that. I'm paying for that.
It's the prelims model that does it, man. They suck me in every time. I'll watch the prelims for they're free on ESPN Plus or whatever. And I'm like, this will be enough. I'll be good. And then those in between match promos, and it's like high drama and what's at stake? You gotta see it. I'm like, fuck, I guess I'm gonna spend $75.
Oh man, 75.
And invariably every time I do, it's like a decision. It's like a decision-filled card. Like every fight goes 5 rounds, and it's like it's none of the high drama that they advertise. But every time I don't get it, it's like it was a finish every fight, first round.
They'll be talking about this fight for years.
Yeah. And I'm reading about it on MMA Junkie the next day. So
oh man.
With your latest one, I don't know if gentler's the right word for the opening chapter, but with 3/5, it was sort of straight into it and quite a violent first chapter.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying that. This one, I don't know if eases you in is the right word, but you get to know the person quite quickly. Was that like a conscious thing to sort of make it slightly less?
Definitely. I was trying to find a balance between a loud, violent sport related thing with a quiet character drama. To me, 3/5 was a character study too. I was very shocked when it got embraced by the crime community. I mean, I was grateful, but I was surprised because I didn't think I had written a crime novel, even though the crime is like the inciting incident. But I did want something. I was trying to find this balance between an opening that let you know immediately what kind of trouble this character was in, but not something that was quite as in your face as what happens in 3/5. which is interesting because when I first started writing After the Lights Go Out, I started writing it as a crime novel. Because I kind of thought I thought I had to. Like I was,
Yeah.
it did so, 3/5 did so well as a crime novel. I was like, I guess I'm writing crime books now. And then, but I got like 20,000 words into it and hated it. I mean, it was just not, it felt very contrived, and it wasn't what I was looking to write. And so, it still started with a car in the heat and something wrong, but it wasn't that. So I went back to the drawing board for that quieter moment, and things just flowed from there.
Yeah, that first chapter is so it gets you straight away, and you can sort of see why the character's doing it, and then you can also see that he knows that it's not probably the right thing. It's great. You said about sort of being you sort of were writing it as a crime novel because you thought you had to. Was that you personally, or was that publisher pressure kind of thing?
No, because I didn't have a publisher for the second book. I just started. Yeah, the first book was actually my MFA thesis.
Wow.
So I wrote that in sort of a different mindset with a different sort of discipline and rules. The next book was it's funny. I've been asked that before. Was it internal pressure? Was it external pressure? And I think I mistakenly thought it was external pressure, like, this everybody's embracing this crime, I should do it as crime. But that nobody was saying, hey, you got to write another crime novel. So it was definitely an internal compass that said, hey, you got to, maybe this is the way to go. But it wasn't the way.
So was it like a question originally of like, I'm going to sit down and write the story that I want to read, or the story that was burning inside you that you wanted to tell, and then it sort of like managed to sort of like, I don't know, a genre kind of adopted it afterwards almost?
Yeah, for sure. Because as also in the case with 3/5, I didn't see a lot of that type of storytelling about mixed race relationships and sort of the nuance behind them, as opposed to sort of it being just sort of a side topic of another book. Sometimes it's just, a couple happens to be a mixed race in the book. There's not to say that fiction doesn't exist, but I hadn't seen a lot of it. I was looking to, I just was telling a story. But as you said, as sort of the genre sort of adopted it, which again, very grateful for, because it was the adoption was very loving. It was great.
Well, yeah, because I mean, some of the names that have championed your work, and shouted about your work, like unbelievable, like, and heroes of mine too, like David Joy, Sean Cosby, Chris Whitaker. Chris Whitaker won our book of the year last year. He just like with We Begin at the End, so I haven't had the luxury of having a beer with the other guys, but Chris is good to have a beer with, man.
Yeah.
So,
funny as hell. Like,
yeah,
he's great. I can completely see that. I'm really hoping someday to make it across your way, because I would love to meet everybody that I've spoken to over there.
Yeah, cool. So, because something that we like, we always find is that the community looks after each other. Like the crime community is a supportive and giving one. Would that tally with your own experience?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Even with this book, that's not really a crime book. I mean, it's it's noirish, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, people have still been they were very much looking forward to it. They were really excited about it, which was obviously exciting for me. So
I think what's really shone through with the podcast is it started off as, because we all write crime, that's what it was. But actually, the more we've got into it, it's just, if it's a good book, we try and get the person on. And I mean, it's fascinating talking to whoever. But as soon as I like I said, I read 3/5 last year, and it's always been the one. And then we somehow followed each other on Twitter, and I was like, right, well, here's my moment.
He's honestly, John, Chris is the man when it comes to the scheduling and getting guests here. Honestly, he is a monster. He's amazing.
You didn't have to twist my arm.
Thanks, man. So what about like your process, like in that sense? I mean, like sorry, Chris, should we go back to like publication, like the whole the whole 9 yards of like, were you always going to be a writer, John?
No, not yet. It wasn't even close. Well, actually, that's not true. I guess it was close, and then I had like a 10-year delay. So I got my undergraduate degree in writing, but and I had some really great instructors even as an undergrad. But like, there was no career counselor that was like, hey, you should write books. Like I started writing 3/5 as a screenplay actually back then.
Oh, wow.
As an undergrad, just because I loved movies. And I kind of, there were a lot of books where you could kind of teach yourself formatting and stuff like that. And I even got it shopped to a couple of production companies, but I was like 23 years old and the writing was just dog shit. So it just didn't, it just didn't go anywhere. So it was kind of like, well, I can keep trying to do that, or I can eat. So, my parents were both in healthcare, and I just didn't really see a way forward with it. So, I applied to physiotherapy school and I got in, thankfully, and started working in that. And it just like with writing, I kind of threw myself into it. I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to try and be the best I can at it. And so I really threw myself into the career, but I just always felt like this call to go back to creative stuff. And I just found myself getting less and less content, to the point where I was no longer content. I was really unhappy in the profession, but was looking for ways like, all right, well, maybe I can leverage writing in healthcare. And so I started getting into, like, at first it was like I would start writing the newsletters for the company I was working for, or just anything that would just start to involve me in that way. And then my wife is the one who was like, hey man, like you can't keep doing this. Like you're clearly miserable. You know what you like to do. Like, why don't you look at like, going back to writing? And I was like, well, I've forgotten everything I've learned about writing at this point, from craft to mechanics to any of that stuff. And happened to find a low residency program, which we met for 1 week a year, and then would go back home and work on our thesis with an advisor. So we met every week, 2 weeks out of the year for 2 years. And then you'd have a full manuscript at the end. And in the meantime, I started looking for like healthcare writing jobs, and like I actually got out of healthcare altogether, started doing marketing and things like that. And that's how that kind of took place. So it was one of those things where it's like, I'm the last person to say you need an MFA to write a book. It was just what I needed at the time.
Yeah.
Get myself back into that to immerse myself in that experience.
That is amazing. So we get this thing, don't we, Chris, where, sometimes people think like, when we have guests on, like, oh, it must have been an overnight success. It must have just dropped. I can see your face, John, immediately. Like, and then every time I think that, no matter who we have on this show, it's always wrong. It's always not the case. Like everyone has grafted for years to get where they're going with this.
Oh yeah. There was nothing overnight about it, and even after the thesis was done, it was still a couple of years before anybody picked it up. So,
man.
And then the success, I mean, because it was named one of the best books in the Chicago Tribune.
That still blows my mind. I still can't get over that.
But then over here as well, The Guardian, the Sunday Times. I mean, did that surprise you, or did you kind of think it is a good book?
Fucking shocked. After a couple of years, I didn't think this thing was going to leave my hard drive. Like it was rejection after rejection. But I still say, for any aspiring writers that are listening, like the rejections were great, because, and I know, like I'm the first guy that if I hear that, if I'm an aspiring writer and I hear that on a podcast, I'm like, give me a fucking break. Like, you public. So like, yeah, great. I'd roll my eyes at that too, honestly. But what rejections did for me was teach me to look for consistency in rejections, because like, when you get your first rejection, the first thing you do is scramble to change whatever it is that they said was wrong, if you're lucky enough to get that feedback. Because sometimes it's just a form letter that's like, yeah, thanks, but I didn't connect with the piece or whatever. So when they started to pile up and I started to see some of the same things, that was immensely helpful in finding like, okay, this is the direction you're going to take this thing. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, yes, I was very surprised because again, after 2 years of nothing, I wasn't sure it was going to happen, but I was bound and determined to make everybody tell me no, you know, like I was gonna.
Oh man, that is I admire that so much because there's nothing that there's nothing that will get under my skin more than when someone says to me, I've written a book, I sent it out, it came back and I got a rejection, so I'm gonna do something else. Like, wait, whoa. You know, like you might have gold, you might have something that will change your entire life. Don't stop there. You know, you keep every rejection is just another step forward.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't stop there. And like I'm looking at like 3/5, what 3/5 was nominated for. The New Blood Dagger over here in the UK, the Anthony, the Edgar, was nominated for all these things. You know, like it's insane. You know, and like rejections happen; they happen because we're in a subjective artistic world,
right? Well, and to be fair, I think some people though get conditioned to that because you'll see writers out there that'll say, well, it's never going to be your first book that gets published, it's going to be your second or your third, right? Like it's the second or third one you write. And I'm like, I call bullshit on that. Like it's hard enough, right? Like you don't need somebody who's already made it telling you like, hey, yeah, it's probably not going to be that first one. Like, oh great, thanks. Like, I mean, how productive is that? Like to me, I was like, it's going to be my first one or it's not going to be any. Like, why the fuck am I going to write another one if I can't get this one published?
Man, I love this because you have to be so, like, doing this job is stubbornness and bloody mindedness more than anything else, you know, like, and love of doing it, I guess.
Right. Absolutely. That's it's I'm glad you said that too, because one of the things that I have been saying, I've been lucky enough this past semester to teach at a low residency MFA program too, actually.
Cool.
And one of the things that there's so many like there's still a lot of writing rules that people just love to put out there, and like, you know, the one that I hear a lot that I even used to subscribe to was like, you got to have a thick skin for this business, and I'm like, I actually disagree with too, because I think a thick skin filters out the good stuff you need to get from rejections, right? You know, like if you're too thick skinned about it and you're like, it's part of the business, I don't care, then you're not like actually taking the opportunity to get what you need out of those rejections. Like to me, I say get emotional, be upset by a rejection because it's upsetting, but like just be aware enough to say, okay, there might be something in there that I can take from this, but don't shut yourself off completely that you can't get that thing out of it. So I don't know. That's my little philosophy.
That's great.
I know. I love that. Because we have a lot of aspiring writers who listen to us.
Yeah.
And they will, gang, if you're listening, I don't think I'm going to hear a better piece of advice this year. I don't think that's just
there's so much. I don't know. This business does a lot to keep it from being accessible for a lot of people. I don't know. I just because of the path I took to it, I'm bound and determined to not have that be the case.
So. That's amazing. And
forging your own future.
Yeah. So the feedback that you got from the rejections that you got for 3/5, did that change how you wrote or approached the second book?
Well, for sure. I mean, there were a lot of things in there. Like the one big thing that I got, and it's still in 3/5, but I think I toned it down a bit, was how much coincidence was in it, you know, in terms of how people met. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I think I read somewhere, I think it was Alexander Chee that said something about he loves a good coincidence in a book. And I was like, I kind of do too. Like I sort of like to read when coincidental things happen in a book, but I could see how relying on it too much, you know, does sort of it harms your ability to suspend your disbelief. So that for sure was something I was cognizant of as I was doing this one, and probably will always be. But yeah, certain things about characterization and I think probably characterization was the biggest thing, like treading that line between likability and unlikability, not that you have to have likable characters, because I actually don't like books where characters are all that likable, but you can't make them so unlikable as to be disinterested, right? Like, just then they become one note. They're not layered. They're just that one thing. So I would say those are probably the biggest things I learned.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about characters, leap off the page is a cliche, but they really, like, when I've been reading them, you feel like you're in their world, and I think it's amazing. So the one thing I wanted to ask you was, how do you create your characters? Do you sit down and think about them beforehand, or do you let them develop as you write?
It's a little bit of both. I'm definitely not an outliner. Like I start with the characters. I figure out what situation puts them in trouble. The rest is sort of figuring how they're going to get out of trouble. I have an ending in mind. I have a beginning in mind, but the middle is all trial and error. Because that feels the most realistic to me, right? Like, I think that's the most authentic. It's life sometimes is mundane and meandering. It's not usually these big, huge events. So it's I got to interview with a guy the other day who said he liked how I focused on the mundane in my book, and I was like, yeah, because I guess that's kind of like, that's life, right? I mean, if I'm trying to write true to life fiction, that's something I want to focus on.
Yeah, but also it doesn't feel, because some writers put in mundane things and their books are like bricks, and you sort of think like you could have lost 200 of that mundane, but yours are so succinct and needed almost, I think is the word. But yeah, that's great to hear that, because I'm sort of plotting something at the minute, and I'm not usually a plotter, but I thought this time I'm going to give it a little go, and I just got so bored that I did like the first 3 things, and I thought, actually, I'm going to see what would happen at the end of that chapter. What would I do next? And that's kind of where I'm going. So I'm pleased that it's worked for you.
And well, it's more fun that way, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a little bit of, there should be some discovery for you as the writer as much as there should be for the reader, I think. And to your point, I love shorter books lately. Like to me, shorter books, everything feels so carefully chosen, like even just down at the sentence level, as opposed to your point, to just a brick. Like I don't like how much of that could be cut. Which is ironic, because like when 3/5 first came out, and I was like, it's only just over 200 pages. Like, as a new writer, I'm like, oh God, they're gonna think it's a novella, or like it's got to be longer. Like we got increase the font size. Like, make this thing, realizing later that, like, oh no, it worked much better shorter. And even after the lights go out is even a little bit longer, but we work to condense that as well.
Yeah, I think there's something. I know you're going through a short books phase, aren't you, Chris? You enjoy the
I love a little in and out, get it done, move on. And I think my longest thing that I've ever written is at 67,000. I think my latest one, it is a novella. I think it comes in at about 43. I can't beef them up. I just think that's the story and that's how it comes out, and I've sort of accepted the fact.
I love that. Go. I love that, and I think there's such a huge skill in the potency of that. Also, the way that there's a huge skill in distilling that even smaller to being a short story writer. That is. I saw your face, John. It's like that scares me. Like, writing a short story scares me. Like, 100%. It's a whole different discipline.
I did one for that anthology with Vaseem Khan. And I was like, the hardest thing I ever did. I was like, I can't. What do you mean I stop here? Like, I got like, don't I have to write, 3,000, 30,000, 40,000 more words? But yeah, that's an art, man. I can't. Not one that I have mastered.
What is that anthology?
The Perfect Crime. I can.
Yes, Vaz Khan. What a lovely guy.
Oh, yes, I've seen the cover, actually, yeah.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Some awesome names in that one as well, John.
Yeah, when he invited me to it, I was like, did you send this to the wrong email? Okay.
So, right, we talked a little bit about like the crime community in this country, but what about in the US?
In terms of...
Like, is there a big crime network of crime writers together, or I know that we said that you weren't really like, like the crime community sort of like adopted you. in a way. But like, what is the sort of the writing network and community like over there?
I wish I could tell you. Like I think it appears very strong. Like I was invited to join what's called the Crime Writers of Color, which was started by like I think it was like Kelly Garrett and Gigi Pandian and Walter Mosley. But I'll be honest. Like I'm not a big joiner, and I'm not like I don't like I'm a pretty solitary kind of dude sometimes. Like, I mean, if you notice, like my Twitter presence is just like book stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's hard. It's not anybody, but it's not you, it's me kind of thing. Like I don't get super involved in like the networking part of it. I think part of that could be because I have, 2 kids and a wife and 2 dogs. I just don't have time. But I can see just by lurking on social media that like it's the community is very strong, very supportive of each other. Cool. It's constant. There's a lot of lifting while you climb type of things. Like everybody's promoting everybody else, and it's great. And I still get some of that, and I try to do that as best I can. But I'm like in terms of like events and things like that, I'm not quite as enmeshed as some other writers might be. I guess just a troglodyte, I guess.
Sounds ideal, man.
Can I ask about inspirations? Like who were you reading when you were growing up, and sort of who inspired you to pick up the pen?
Oh, God, I mean that started early. I mean that was I don't know if the Scholastic Book Fair is a thing there, or if there's a similar thing, but that was my indoctrination. Like it was, the minute they started rolling those big metal shelves into the lobby and just, open them up. And it was kind of funny. Like my kids are of that age where like the first day they brought home the Scholastic form, they still make it out of the same like newspaper paper.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it was like, there was just this nostalgia that just overwhelmed me when he brought it home. I'm like looking for books for me to order. Because I had like Bunnicula and Encyclopedia Brown and Ramona the Pest and Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. I mean, it all started there. I was a reader at an early age. Now like contemporaries like Jesmyn Ward and Matt Johnson, more classical writers like James Baldwin. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I really love. I mean, I love a lot of literary fiction, but not always necessarily like capital L literary fiction. Like I like character-based stuff, but I also like stuff to happen in the book. I can't just be reading about people just standing around thinking about stuff. Like that's a little too much for me. But I don't know if that answers the question.
It sure does. Yeah,
yeah, it definitely does. I got family in Detroit, and they used to send me Encyclopedia Browns every Christmas.
And they were so great.
They were incredible, so unlike anything we had over here as well. Which is quite staid. Like on this side of the pond, Chris, we'd have like the Famous Five and stuff like that, Secret 7, and then Encyclopedia Brown was this rad kid would just solve immense crimes, and somehow you were involved in it, weren't you? It was super involving. Like I remember being blown away by it.
See, that's because when you were naming sort of things, when we've got Encyclopedia Britannica, which is like that was what I was picturing, but American. So I'm proved wrong and silly.
Oh man, you got to because so Chris teaches. Sorry, Chris, I keep just like jumping in here. I'm sorry, I'm just excited.
You go for it.
Time. But Chris teaches year 6. Chris still year 6.
Yeah.
So get some Encyclopedia Brown over there.
Yeah, that's a perfect age for that.
Encyclopedia Brown, is that?
Honestly, will not. That is it. And they will never have read anything like that.
Yeah.
Sweet. There we go. Order that.
Make sure you add How to Eat Fried Worms to that one too. That was
yes.
Yeah. That's a classic.
Some of the sickest drawings ever in that book. Are you a movie man as well, John?
Oh God, yeah.
Really? What are you enjoying? What do you enjoy?
See, that's hard because that's like books. It's like I love a good story. I mean, I'll watch just about anything. I'm in my glory with the all the Marvel movies because I'm a comic book geek. So
Nice.
that stuff is just phenomenal for me. I like even a bad one is still good. Um, yeah, again, character dramas, a good comedy. I mean, yeah, you can't tear me away from movies.
Awesome.
What's your go-to if you've got like 2 hours to yourself? What's your like go-to film?
Oh, oh man. See, it depends on what I'm in the mood for. American History X is one that I just can't stop watching. If it's
Wow.
all, trying to think, if we're going comedies.
Because that's amazing you say that, because that, for me, that movie is like a one watch.
Yeah,
I'm like,
heavy.
oh gosh, I can never watch that again. That is amazing movie, but I can't go back there.
It's his performance that pulls me into that one though. Like it's
Yeah.
so strong. Like there are some scenes I can't watch, but like, my wife and I were talking about that the other day on a walk about like those one watch movies, like Million Dollar Baby, like amazing movie,
Yeah.
could never watch it again.
Sign me out. Sign me out. Sign me in, then out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I can watch like maybe 3/4 of the way up to it, but like once that stool goes in the ring, no, it's like forget about it.
Oh no.
Requiem for a Dream, another one, amazing movie. Never watch it again.
What's your go-to, Rob?
I've got to be honest. I'm like a massive kid of the 80s and 90s. So Jurassic Park is the best movie ever made, as far as I'm concerned. So but like I keep going back to the Future. I just think it's unbelievably perfect. I like, but oh no, there's so many. I host a movie podcast as well, John. So
oh no kidding.
Yeah, so it's like asking that question, Chris. The can of worms is just
it is hard.
Yeah.
But when you said perfect, it triggered something for me because I think to this day it's still considered one of the most like the perfect screenplay. Is Do the Right Thing.
Oh yeah.
I saw that.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It holds up. I mean, like I don't think that movie will ever feel out of asynchronous. Like it's amazing.
I agree with you. But I put that on that same plateau as In the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier.
Oh yeah.
It like just like so unbelievable. Like I can't even focus on what we're talking about right now, trying to talk about how perfect and incredible. And that's that marriage of performance and story and text. The whole texture of that movie is just incredible.
And where it's sat in time, I think.
Oh man, yeah.
Staggering. We'll just have to do that podcast too. Like we'll just
yeah. We'll roll straight in.
Sorry, I'll tap out. I've not seen either of those, so I apologize.
I love the use of the MMA vernacular as well, though, Chris. Tap out.
Intentional.
Oh, very nice.
So, Chris, at this point, do I ask about what we're reading?
I've got one more thing, if that's okay.
Oh, my word, of course it is.
Both books sort of tackle quite hard-hitting subject matter. Obviously that's intentional, I assume. Was there anything that you're in the editing process that someone sort of said you've gone too far, or can you bring this back a little bit, or did they kind of give you free rein?
Believe it or not, nothing. None of that was an issue at all. I was fortunate to work with two really great editors who saw what it was I was trying to say. If anything, we just looked for if anything was too on the nose, if anything ever felt kind of didactic or sort of wagging the finger at a reader, because that's the last thing I want to do. It's more I want to hold up a mirror kind of thing. But no, there was neither violence nor racial issues nor any of that kind of stuff was ever like, maybe tone it down. They might not like that. It was more like, no, bring it up because
that's great, isn't it?
They won't like it. Like let's put this in their face kind of thing, as opposed to take the edge off.
Yeah, well, that's great. Like Pushkin put out Jonathan Ames' A Man Named Doll last year as well, which is what I absolutely loved. And I'm really looking forward to his second one this year. But it was a publisher that I'd not heard of until yours and his, and now I just like, when it's you've got that, it's going to be good kind of thing. So they're a publisher that I always look out for. So
I think
it's great,
and I think they're continuing to become that kind of publisher. They really seem like they've got great title. They just put out Disha Filial's amazing Secret Lives of Church Ladies. I mean, that was a monster success here, and well deserved. Disha's great, and that book is phenomenal.
What's it? The Secret Life of Church Ladies?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'll look it up. Thank you.
When you talk about short stories and craft and how to make short stories incredible. That collection is, and it's only, I think it's 170 pages. It's not. It's just excellent. I can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Segued into your "What are you reading?" thing, but
yeah, beautifully. Yeah,
very beautifully. Yeah. Well. Oh no, I did the usual thing, Chris. I had a question. It's gone. It's like literally just straight
save it for your movie podcast.
Okay. But I can. Shall I ask the question? What are we reading?
Go for it.
So, what are you reading, John?
So at the moment, I'm lucky enough to be reading. Actually, I can't even say his name, but I'm reading the book of another author I really highly respect. He's letting me read his book before he's even submitting it. So that's great. But now I'm being cool and mysterious now because I get to but one book I've been pumping a lot lately has been actually a book of poetry. I've been at the MFA I got to go to, or that I'm teaching at in Virginia. There's a strong poetry influence there. And I've always tried to make a habit of like reading poetry before I write because I love, again, we talk about the economy of word choice and things like that.
Yeah.
The poet, who better than poets to like take a small amount of words and make these powerful statements. And one of the faculty there is a woman named Shayla Sabri, and she has a book called Field Study. It's actually a prose poem, kind of like in the tradition of like Citizen. That book just knocked my socks off, blew my hair back. I don't even have any left. It's one of the most powerful books I've read in a long time.
And what was it called? Sorry, Field Study.
Field Study, yeah,
by
Shayla Sabri.
I'm gonna look that up.
I'm doing the same here, Chris. I'm noting it down as we're talking.
I love this question.
This is probably the only reason we do this podcast, John, so that we get to know what everyone else is reading and writing. So,
and then after that, after I finish this other book, I'm gonna pick up Nightcrawlers, which is that was just huge over here. I would imagine probably across the pond as well. But
it's got a great cover over here.
Yeah,
vibrant pink,
written by a 19-year-old.
Is it?
Winning and not being nominated. I think it got nominated for the Booker.
It did over here.
Yeah. So I can't wait to dive into that one.
Holy hell!
What about you, Rob?
I literally just this afternoon finished City on Fire by Don Winslow.
Oh, nice.
So you find me having just quit writing. We can't get near that. It's ridiculously good. I think it's the fact that with Don's work, and I say it like I know him. I don't know. With Winslow's work, he takes such time with the characters, never at the expense of pace, and he lets you love these people and learn so much about these people so that you can't help but care about them. It doesn't matter how awful they are. You fall for these people in a really weird way and you want to know what happens to them. And I can just always never predict what's going on, but they're always just epic. They're always just grand in scale, in like the timing of them, like straddling generations. And it was just another grandstand epic moment from Don Winslow. And I didn't know when I got it that it's the first of a trilogy. Holy mackerel, so yeah, that's me quitting once a year for the next 3 years. What about you, Chris? Never quit. No, but what about you, Chris?
This morning I finished Ellie Griffith's I think it's the fourth in the series, A Room Full of Bones. I'm really late to Ellie Griffiths, which I'm ashamed of, but I've got like the first 10 in a box set, which you can see just
great
there.
title.
Yeah. So I'm working my way through them, but because I don't want to go too fast, I read one and then I read something else and then I read another one. So I'm interspersing it with Robert Cray's A Dangerous Man, which I read The Wanted a few books back and it was really great. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Nice.
Dude. And what's next for you, John? I mean, I know you can't say much, but like you're writing at the moment?
I am writing at the moment. I'm probably about 11, 12K into the new one. Really excited about it. Getting a little experimental with it, kind of like sort of the same way with After the Lights Go Out, just sort of playing with structure and form a little bit. And hopefully the publisher doesn't go, what the hell is this? This is not what you said it was. You know, that's at that point it'll be too late. Yeah, but no, I'm really excited about it. So hope to tell you more about it soon.
Oh,
cool.
Man.
Thank you very much.
Wish you so well with it. And if it's anything like what you've already done, I mean, flipping out readers, we're all in for a treat.
After the Lights Go Out came out here on the 1st of September, so and it's a beautiful hardback, isn't it? That the spines, that lovely, brilliant blue.
And that cover.
Yeah.
Man. They outdid themselves. I love the cover for 3/5 too, and I love that they kept it. I think it's pretty much exactly the same color scheme, so they were great.
Yeah, really fits. So, I mean, listeners, it hasn't been out long, but do go grab it. Brilliant, really, really excellent.
Thank you,
and we appreciate your time.
We really do, John. And if you're ever over this side, can we have a beer or a drink of your choice?
Just one. I'm actually like kind of getting sad that we're bringing this to an end. I'm like, I could talk to these guys all day. This is great.
Oh man, that's so cool. No, seriously. It's been a real pleasure. And like, you know, iconic stuff that you're doing. Huge congratulations on everything that's happening. And we'll keep watching, but please come over here so we can tie one on.
Thank you. I will take you up on that invitation, and thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope we stay in touch outside of the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. It's been cool.
Absolutely will, mate.
Yeah. And good luck with book 3.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.